to break up all those wonderful conversations going out there, but we are gathered for a very, very special occasion. So to the invited colleagues, family, and friends of Dr. Witzig, it's my pleasure and privilege to welcome you to the 2017-2018 Professor of the Year reception. This is my first Professor of the Year event at St. Mary's, but I know that this award has a long-standing 27-year history of honoring distinguished achievement in teaching and/or scholarship by a tenured member of the faculty at St. Mary's. This is a particularly cherished and memorable award because the candidates are nominated by their department colleagues or fellow faculty and staff members. This evening, we're honoring Dr. Denise Witzig, Professor of Women's and Gender Studies. Professor Witzig began her career at St. Mary's in 1989 as a lecturer, becoming an adjunct professor, associate professor in the year 2000. In 2010, she converted to tenure track at the rank of associate professor and earned tenure in 2011. In the words of her nominators, Professor Witzig has been a transformational leader, mentor, scholar, colleague, and teacher on the St. Mary's campus. She has passionately served the college community in and beyond her department and represents the very best of the values, interests, energy, and commitment in our faculty. In describing specific accomplishments, Professor Witzig's nominators say that she has truly built the Women's and Gender Studies program and was integral to the proposal to make it a major. As evidence of the impact of that program, in the 2013-14 edition of Colleges That Change Lives, featuring St. Mary's as one of the 40 choices, a 2001 alum from the psychology program explained, "Probably the biggest shift for me came from the Women's Studies program. I realized what was happening, these horrible things, to women around the world. It opened my eyes and forced me to contend with hard stuff, but not without people who helped me process it." In describing her teaching, one of her colleagues said, "Her dedication and generosity to students is legendary. The time she puts into crafting her classes and the attention she pays to the process of intellectual development in the students is remarkable. It's clear the students benefit from it by the passion and eagerness with which they engage with the material." Professor Witzig's nominators also describe a pedagogical practice that few, if any, other faculty on campus do. Every semester, she meets with every single student in her class for 30 minutes at midterm to find out how each student is doing in her classes and at the college. This is an enormous commitment of time and is a precious gift to the majors and minors, as Professor Witzig is building relationships with those students that will benefit them as they're thinking about next steps after St. Mary's. Her nominators also describe Professor Witzig as an accomplished scholar. She has presented 30 conference papers and has 8 peer-reviewed publications, including chapters in 4 different anthologies and an article in the highly regarded Women's Studies Journal. According to her nominators, much of Professor Witzig's research has resulted from her numerous January term courses, which illustrate the many ways in which she is a true teacher-scholar. Her scholarship is interdisciplinary, integrative, and cutting edge in women's studies, combining feminist and literary theories with pop culture, media, and fashion. It has gained wide recognition in women's studies academic circles and beyond, with young feminist writers and colleagues at other institutions drawing from her original syllabi to analyze contemporary society or develop their own courses. In terms of service, Professor Witzig's nominators say that she is highly regarded and sought after on committees throughout the college because of her work ethic and strong commitment to St. Mary's. Her major areas of service from 2010 to present continue to be on behalf of the Women's and Gender Studies program and include serving as an administrator of the program and as the sole full-time faculty member in the program. She is also the advisor for the Women's and Gender Studies students and regularly advises students on their theses. In addition, she has created what her nominators call a, quote, stunningly vibrant Women's and Gender Studies speaker series, bringing the most prominent intellectuals in her field to campus to speak and meet with students, including Anita Hill, Gloria Steinem, Angela Davis, and many others. Professor Witzig's service also includes contributing to the development of the new core curriculum, contributing to the college's diversity efforts, and other contributions and accomplishments too numerous to itemize here. I would just like to end on a personal note. Very early in my time at St. Mary's, Professor Witzig invited me to an informal gathering of the Women's and Gender Studies Advisory Board and made me feel very welcomed to the college. Although I don't know Denise nearly as well as the rest of you, I very quickly got a sense that she was very special and a great gift to the college. And at that, I give you Professor Witzig.
Troublemaker. Okay, sorry, it's the age. I have to take. I have to preserve this moment. There are so many old faces, and by that I mean young old faces here, that I just want to remember this all because I'm so flattered and touched to see all of you here, and especially a lot of students whom I haven't seen since they graduated, and it really makes me never want to leave. So sorry, St. Mary's. Blame it on the alums, because I am here for a while. And I've been here for a while. So, of course, I want to start by thanking everybody once again for coming. Thank you to President Donahue, who's back there, I see him. Our new provost, Margaret Casimatos, I'm very excited to have her here. To our former provost, Beth Dobkin, to the Professor of the Year nominating committee, all of whom were involved in giving me this great honor. And thank you especially, scattered about, to my dear sisters and brothers in pink, the Women's and Gender Studies Advisory Board, who really are my reason for being here today. There's a familiar slogan from the women's movement of the 1960s and 70s, the personal is political. What this means, of course, is that personal experiences reflect and are impacted by larger cultural ideas about people, their identities, and their roles. I also like Angela Davis's reversal, the political is personal, because it highlights the way these systems and representations land on individuals and their lives, shaping their ambitions and dreams. Both versions fit our own times, as we are seeing and hearing a wave of testimonials by women and men through #MeToo or Time's Up about how their gender adversely affects the experiences they have with jobs and in the workforce. So I'll invoke the spirit of that perspective in my remarks here today. And because I am a narrative theorist by training, it only seems right to begin with a story, suggesting, I hope, the many other diverse stories that women in particular tell each other about their work. This is the story of a job. My first job was at 9 years old. It offered me, I felt, a great deal of authority and prestige, and I took it seriously and performed it faithfully 5 days a week. I was the third grader at Christ the King School in St. Louis, Missouri, selected to go to the principal's office every morning recess at 10:15 a.m. and make coffee for the nuns. Access to the principal's office itself, with its big wooden desk and deep bookshelves, was payment enough for this responsibility, even if I did give up recess. And it brought me a lifelong love of coffee, although I have left the 20-cup percolator behind. My next job came the following year, when at 10, for the 6 Mulligan kids every Sunday when their parents went to Mass. It really wasn't a demanding job. 2 of those Mulligans were twin infants, so I only had to entertain the other 4. And that was easy to do with coloring, hairbrushing, and reading stories. And as anyone who has ever babysat knows, it's a piece of cake when you're a kid yourself. This job brought a real salary, $1 a week. Big pay for an hour's worth of play, and enough to keep me in the Wonder Woman and Lois Lane comics I feverishly consumed. There were other babysitting jobs, a lot of them, but also jobs I created with the help of my single mom. Running summer camps in the backyard for neighborhood kids, where we wrote stories and illustrated them. And jobs polishing brass ashtrays for the old folks' home. That was the nuns. And jobs organizing bake sales and mentoring younger girls in the brownies and selling cookies. All of these jobs, when I was very young, shared a common quality and purpose: the honor and joy of working in behalf of others in community, primarily a community of women and girls. For me, it didn't matter that these jobs didn't pay well or pay at all. I was a kid after all, and my only expenses were comic books. But as noted, the true payment was in the sense of value I felt, the self-confidence I gained in doing the job and doing it well. And those jobs created in me a desire for service, commitment to community, and a connection to others. They were also jobs that were very specifically gendered, as most jobs were in the 1960s, particularly for white middle-class girls. I didn't deliver papers or cut the neighbor's grass, and no boy I ever knew hung out with the Mulligans. Most of my jobs involved caretaking, nurturing and mentoring, a familial kind of service which was honed through my Catholic education. These were jobs that girls should do, should want to do. They were my cultural and social responsibility, and I embraced this direction and made it work for me. These jobs led me to see my own agency, authority, and success through service to others. Which brings me to St. Mary's. Well, in 25 years of other jobs, it brings me to St. Mary's. I came to St. Mary's, as Margaret has said, in the fall of 1989, ABD, 4 months pregnant with my daughter, and with a 3-year-old son at home. I'd been hired to teach one section of Better Writing 1, and I shared a desk with another lecturer hired also to teach one section of writing. Since the desk we shared belonged to the Venerable Mary Springer, away on sabbatical, I felt I should tread lightly in the halls of Dante and adopted the pose of visitor as if I were on another planet. This really wasn't hard. My name wasn't on any doors. I didn't even have my own drawer in that desk, and I was nervous about using the phone which sat on a tufted pillow. I still don't know why. Most days I just felt like taking a nap on the floor during my very quiet office hours. Second trimester will do that to you. Not to say that the college wasn't friendly. Brother Manuel Vega would greet me every morning as he strode down the third floor halls, his beautiful day, isn't it, Denise? No matter what the weather, bringing cheer and helping to make me feel welcome. My female colleagues in the English department who had hired me, in particular Sandy Grayson, who soon became a dear friend, reached out with good humor to answer questions and share stories about classroom challenges. The students themselves were amazing from the start, mainly because they laughed at my jokes. Coming together in easy community to address collaborative goals. I was comfortable here, I just wasn't sure I was going to stay. Almost 30 years later, that question has been worked out. My career at St. Mary's has been tremendously fulfilling, allowing me to participate in the creation of new programs, to develop my research in dynamic fields, and most of all, to challenge myself and grow every day that I'm in the classroom. In this, I am indebted to my ever-amazing students and to the grace and resilience, not to mention the impeccable fashion taste of my dear colleagues in women's and gender studies. But I was also an adjunct for 20 years, teaching in composition, Jan Term, and women's studies. I had little control over what I taught or when I taught. One semester, the only available courses were an 8 a.m. argument and research class and a 3 p.m. women's studies special topics course, followed by evening film viewings. So those were 2 days a week. I had to leave before my young children woke up and get home after they were in bed. 2 days a week, I didn't see them, even though we slept under the same roof. 1 year, I made a total of $12,000, despite teaching 4 courses, which just about but not quite paid for childcare. And every year, I got a letter on the day of the Christmas party firing me, even when I was the director of the Women's Studies program. It felt like a precarious way to make a living, featuring an uncertain future in a profession I had spent what felt like my whole life preparing and hoping for. This is just one story of a job, but it's a familiar account for many women in higher ed who have become experts at the so-called work-life balance. And I was very fortunate and am still to have a partner who more than made up for my poor contributions to the family nest in those early years. It is still women, however, who continue to be challenged in the academic workforce by the demands of highly gendered expectations and incomes in uneven alignment with their own professional goals. Women in academia who, as the great Donna Summer would say, work hard for the money. Last May, when this award was announced at the spring dinner, I laughed with Kathy Davalos and Dana Lawton that we should start this talk with a flash mob rendition of The Hustle. I'm gauging your response to see if you want to do it. And I think I saw Dana. I think we could do it. She is ready. And I'm having a hard time letting go of that image in my head, although it's a little frightening. I know you could do it. But I want to hold on to the metaphor for a moment. Hustle is what many of us feel we do every day in our work at the college. We hustle just to get the job done. And it's not pretty or powerful or sexy like Donna Summer. It's hard, and we miss steps. We hustle to get syllabi together. We hustle to get to meetings at the end of long days. We hustle to review and assess and review again. We hustle to create programs that challenge and sustain our intellectual community. We hustle to align budgets with goals. We hustle to get to the table and bring others with us. We hustle for parking spaces. For women workers, that hustling frequently extends into after-hours advising of student groups or mentoring students in crisis or late evening family care and tending to other people who need our time and support. the emotional work that somehow must get done. Sometimes we hustle just to tread water. Now, there's another sense of the metaphor I'm calling on here, and that idea of hustling has less to do with constant motion than with the hard sell of a product that isn't quite what it purports to be, a bad faith transaction. And in the age of so-called fake news, we know that meaning all too well. We're used to being hustled in the marketplace, by the media, by Congress, Facebook. And this hustle inspires cynicism, doubt, and loss of faith in systems and institutions designed to sustain our efforts. This characterization is in direct contrast to the dance as it is to the mode of hustle I addressed earlier. Hustling, working fast and hard because it's the right thing to do. But that other veiled meaning is always conditional to the notion that we engage a kind of hustle to get the job done, to perform in the institution's best interests. While we may reject the crass consumerism of that interpretation, we recognize the inherent cynicism it engenders from time to time. And the service economy nature of our jobs in a changing educational landscape may just be one culprit. After all, we also work in service to an economy of ideas, expectations, and goals represented through multiple formal and implied contracts of exchange between ourselves and our students, between ourselves and the college, the liberal arts, and higher education. Certainly here at St. Mary's, we have engaged in numerous discussions through the years about the value of particular workers in particular roles in particular economies, leading on the one hand to the creation of a contingent faculty union, and on the other to the voluntary and involuntary separation of staff and faculty colleagues. As the shifting economy at the college mirrors national trends in the neoliberal university, workers have come to be seen as transactional agents in the process of producing customers, otherwise known as students. And while the nature of that process may in fact be rooted in a shrinking marketplace, it can't help but inspire cynicism among those who envision themselves committed to a different kind of transaction, that of the production of knowledge, critical thinking, and civic engagement. Enter to learn, leave to serve is how St. Mary's models that transformative process. And it's a worthy goal in service to the aims of the liberal arts to produce good citizens who will promote civic accountability and social equity throughout their life work. But how, after all, can we accomplish this formidable mission and the college's Lassallean commitment to the whole person without putting at its center the people who are entrusted to its execution, the workers themselves? How can we understand and respond to a rapidly changing marketplace without careful consideration of how we create a climate conducive to intellectual productivity and engagement? How do we give meaning and purpose to the hustle, to work? And what should that look like? These are not new or original questions. I've heard them discussed consistently in my 29 years at the college in large groups and small. We have created committees to conduct assessments, surveyed the campus climate, reviewed rank and tenure procedures, and directed exit interviews of people who choose to leave. We evaluate faculty output in classrooms, departments, and programs, and we review staff performance year after year. We can tell a lot from these formal processes, studies, and investigations, and we can sometimes use them productively to realign our labor processes and improve support systems that add value to how we work at St. Mary's. But what's left out of all the data, and what is frequently the topic in more informal discussions, especially among my female colleagues, is how people feel about their work, their jobs at the college. How workers see their contributions and their value to the institution. This is one reason, for example, the successful creation of the Contingent Faculty Union was so necessary in its formal recognition of the tremendous value of the teacher, as well as teaching itself. In my own long tenure as adjunct, the feeling of precarity was at the core of my employment experience. Not just an economic precarity, a precarity of worth, of reciprocal value expressed through mutuality and respect. These are the same concerns I hear among a variety of female workers at the college today. And as my experiences with jobs early in life showed me, the value of work, particularly for the worker, is measured in complex and intangible ways. Terms like job satisfaction or campus climate only touch the surface of what is usually a lifelong commitment to ideas, experiences, people, and place. I recently showed the documentary, The Life and Times of Rosie the Riveter, in my WAGS 100 class. It's a special topics course, and this semester we are examining the relationship between social and historical ideas about feminism and how they are represented through popular culture. I showed the film in class to look at the familiar image of Rosie with her slogan, "We can do it," to understand what that story was really about, who Rosie was, and what her representation has meant to the history of women at work. As we know, Rosie was really an advertising icon, created to enlist the labor of women for the war effort in the 1940s. The real-life Rosies were blue-collar workers, many of them women of color, who had taken factory jobs to learn skills and make more money than regular employment in low-paid service in restaurants and on janitorial staffs offered. The film is a compilation of oral histories of several women who relate how they came to factory work and their memories of their experiences before, during, and after those jobs. The striking thing about all of their stories is the tremendous pride they felt as welders and machine operators, skills which they all had to learn and prove on the floor every day. The work challenged them and paid them well. And this female labor force was the product of expansive propaganda on behalf of the war. So the workers' feeling of value was repeated in a wide variety of stories about women and their contributions to society at the time. We know how that ended, of course. The same propaganda machine that got women into this burgeoning workforce took them out again when jobs were handed back to the returning veterans. And women workers now were encouraged to get back to the kind of production their true natures destined them for, making babies. Still, the line from the film that resonated for me and for my students was remembered by one of the women who had been a welder, who fought hard to learn those skills and to earn her place making ships and planes, a position only guaranteed when she became an organizer for the union. One night, as she welded in dark and hot and dangerous conditions, tired and looking forward to going home, her co-worker turned to her with a weary smile. "Work is sweet," he said in Yiddish. She recalled the memory as if it were a gift. Work is sweet. In the film, it's a message of solidarity that gets to something intrinsic about the nature of work that is valuable and valued. And it is a striking observation in any history, but especially by a woman who was hustled in and out of the labor force in such cynical fashion. So, from my classroom to the podium, the story of this Rosie leads me to a final question. Is work sweet for women workers at St. Mary's College? I think in many ways the answer to this question is yes. The work that all of us do at St. Mary's, when it closely is tied to the mission and to the tradition of the liberal arts, is bracing, fulfilling, purposeful in ways that connect to our central ideas of self and community. But in the many conversations I've had with female colleagues in the faculty and staff over the years, and especially in recent discussions, key concerns come up over and over. These concerns reflect larger challenges facing women in the workforce across many kinds of jobs in many different industries. A current feature article in the Chronicle of Higher Education titled "The Awakening, Women in Power in the Academy" offers dramatic accounts of how historical and deeply enforced these challenges are. We see them here at St. Mary's in ongoing debates about gender inequities highlighted in times of economic and professional precarity. Here are just 4 interlinked points of concern that have come up consistently in my conversations about work with women faculty and staff. I'm going to make you wait. The pause. It's like a commercial? Okay. The first is transparency. Transparency is a common area of critique in informal discussions, equity workshops, campus climate surveys, and reports across academic institutions nationally and here at the college. Issues of transparency can relate to the specifics of job expectations and requirements, both visible and invisible, the clarification of roles, information about available resources, and possibilities for advancement. Transparency is a consistent area of concern among women faculty and staff, particularly for junior and contingent faculty, and for women of color in jobs across the college. Lack of transparency at St. Mary's adds to feelings of precarity in both economic and professional aspects of employment and contributes to the sense that invisible political structures and expectations govern promotion, pay, and assessment of success in how we work. Autonomy. Autonomy affects women faculty and staff in different ways. If on tenure track, women faculty have a path to a certain degree of autonomy in teaching and research that is not available to contingent faculty. However, even after promotion to tenure, women faculty frequently get stuck at associate level as they experience more and more institutional demands on their time, particularly in service to their departments and to the college. Once again, this reflects national trends. The Academy's Pink Collar, one of the essays mentioned in the current Cron of Higher Ed report, notes, quote, a study from TIAA Institute found that 53% of part-time faculty and 45% of full-time faculty in 2013 were women, and that fewer than 1 in 10 female faculty members are full professors. Female associate professors tend to chair departments, serve on committees, teach introductory labor-intensive courses, advise students, and mentor student groups in greater numbers, all of which provides them little time for scholarship and slows promotion to full professor. In the case of faculty who are women of color, they are also expected to be the face of diversity on campus, contributing to their additional time spent advising, mentoring, and serving on committees without compensation or additional resources. For support staff, many of whom are women, the yearly departmental performance review process doesn't always address their numerous contributions and commitments of time and effort to the institution, nor does it offer clear career advancement in pay or position. For female administrative staff, especially for those who hold advanced degrees, there can be a lack of institutional recognition of and support for their multifaceted contributions of service and expertise. We lose these qualified women to jobs at institutions with better advancement opportunities on a consistent basis, particularly when they are women of color. Service. There's much to say about gender inequities in service, and it is being said regularly in the academic press, in books and articles, in the Cron of Higher Education, in climate surveys, and across social media. A recent SUNY Press publication of essays, 10 Million Served, Gendered Service in Language and Literature Workplaces, addresses service as institutional housekeeping, finding it particularly gendered in the humanities. The editors note that for most U.S. faculty, service is not perceived as intellectual work, and it is often framed as a labor of love, akin to the caregiving tasks women perform for their mates, children, places of worship, and community groups, rather than work for which they should be paid and acknowledged. A 2017 investigation undertaken by the Faculty Council of UMass Boston examined the relationships between gender, minority status, service committees, and the roles of these intersection factors in tenure and promotion at that campus. The highly detailed report found, among other observations, that female faculty were disproportionately represented in commitments to service, teaching intensive courses, and advising, and that this disproportionality was multiplied for women faculty of color. The report found that service was not clearly defined across the institution and was not valued at higher levels of advancement. This account is in keeping with recent reports at a wide variety of colleges and universities and serves as a model of institutional research on gendered academic labor. While St. Mary's is slowly compiling its own data on gender and racial inequities in service and promotion, the anecdotal accounts in workshops, in departmental meetings, and in climate surveys represent a stream of discontent through the years, especially as service expectations have increased with retirements and accelerated administrative committee expansion. As an added labor of love, women faculty and staff frequently advise and mentor each other in navigating the college's expectations and requirements, a task they take on because of the lack of institutional support systems, guidelines, and networks. This informal, invisible, emotional work rarely shows up in departmental reviews or R&T letters. For faculty trained in scholarship and teaching, service to the institution has taken on a whole new learning curve. And the additional commitment of time and intellectual energy involved in many of these endeavors has seriously detracted from research and other creative opportunities. Certainly, a commitment to service is foundational to the college and its three traditions. But the liberal arts and its emphasis on intellectual purpose, critical inquiry, and engagement with the history and future of ideas is diminished in stature if not given full weight in the balance of institutional commitment and expectation. Representation. Across the faculty and staff of the college, we are losing women of color at an alarming rate. This year alone, St. Mary's is experiencing the departure of 3 recently hired female faculty of color. In recent years, we have seen a pattern of departure for highly qualified female staff of color, and we continue to experience their loss on a continual basis. Each of these cases has its own set of circumstances, of course, and each individual who leaves St. Mary's has her or his own story to tell about the reasons why. My comments are not an attempt to universalize these. But it is clear we are not going to be the thriving, mission-centered community and center of Lasallian education we hope to be if we don't look at the loss of these highly accomplished workers systemically. What are we not doing to sustain and support women of color at the college? What are we not providing in the fullness of our commitment to them and in the fullness of our commitment to our students and to the St. Mary's community? It is not enough to say that we are trying. What are we doing and not doing? Finally, there are many ongoing efforts at work to address the concerns noted above. Committees like PI, SOLA's Plan for Inclusive Excellence, the CCIE, the College Committee for Inclusive Excellence, and the Academic Senate's Task Force for Hiring Black and African American Faculty, workshops for GUIDE and the Radical Healing community, recently revitalized AAUP membership, and the Contingent Faculty Union all offer the hard work, hope, and ideas of many faculty and staff determined to create and sustain a culture of equity on campus. The Faculty Women's Group offers support and institutional interventions that carve out new directions and possibilities in how we work and how the college supports female workers. We need similar institutionally recognized and supported committees for female staff, and, as it's dramatically clear, for faculty of color. This tempts me to say with Rosie that we can do it. But we won't succeed at any of our attempts to address challenges and transitions at the college and the opportunities these offer if we don't take into account the stories about work that women workers tell and the obstacles and conditions they convey. Women are at the heart of the mission of St. Mary's, and their future is all of ours. So, because this is my Oscar moment, I ask every woman and female identified person who works for the college in any capacity, faculty, staff, administration, service, student workers, to please stand and be acknowledged. Thank you for standing. This is way better than the Oscars. They had almost nobody stand. A popular slogan goes, "The future is female," though that prophecy may be less than accurate. But clearly, here at St. Mary's, the present is female, and it is hard at work. Thank you. I just want to say this is very unfamiliar. I feel I should do a Q&A now, but I'm not going to.